Hello, everybody. Mark O'Donnell here with Operations Excellence, and welcome back to our podcast. We're really excited for this episode. We have a new guest that we haven't had on the show before. We're coming to you from Clickstream Studios. Wonderful, wonderful space here, and I want to say thank you as always to our producer and man of many hats, Danny Tripati. Danny, thanks, buddy. All right, and I would like to introduce our guest for today's episode. I'd like you all to welcome Kim Jaworski, who is the office manager of Bodycote Syracuse Heat Treating. She is with the AGI division of Bodycote right here in Syracuse, New York. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm living the dream, as always. It's another beautiful summer day in Syracuse, and we get so few of those, so we got to make the most of them, right?
We do.
All right, Kim, thank you for being on the show, taking the time to be with us. I know out of your busy day, you got a lot to do, so appreciate that very much. To start off with, could you tell our audience a little bit about Bodycote and what you guys do and who your typical customers might be?
Sure. So Bodycote is heat treating. So we provide thermal processing services which improve metal materials. It strengthens durability, the corrosion resistance. So our customers, they send us things, maybe pieces that go in cars, airplanes, guns, anything that's metal that we need to change the outcome of how the strength of how long it's gonna last.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's post-manufacture processing, correct?
Correct.
Typically?
Correct. Yep.
And you do a lot of work with materials and products, manufactured products.
Yep. So different metals and alloys.
Right.
So for example, surface hardness, temperature resistance.
Yep.
We strengthen like the metal joining.
Yep. So you're literally changing the physical properties of the metal in post production.
Correct.
Yeah. Awesome. That is awesome. What would you say separates Bodycote from, say, your competitors?
I would say we're international and we're in the United States. I mean, we have 165 plants around the world.
Wow.
We're in 22 countries, and we have the newest and best equipment out there. We have a lot of, long-term employees, so they understand the business. They don't just hit buttons. They understand the business and how to read those blueprints and come up with the best process to get the end result for the customer.
That's awesome. So you're large enough that you've got some deep pockets, the company does, and invest in the newest technology, but you also have the experienced people to match up with that. So it
Correct.
Sounds like technologically you bring a lot to the table, Bodycote does.
Yes.
That's awesome. So I would bet you're probably doing business with some pretty high-end manufacturers that are pretty demanding in their specifications, yes?
Correct.
Yeah.
Customers like GE.
Yep.
We're automotive, so a lot of automotive industry.
Okay. You do aerospace as well, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So very demanding world that you're living in. So your role there as office manager, can you tell us about your current role? Maybe a little bit overview of your background, and then maybe a little bit about what your aspirations are in your leadership journey.
Sure. So in my current role, I wear a lot of hats. So, I'm local HR. I do the payroll processing. I generate all the purchase orders. My team handles all the billing, so we create all the invoicing. I handle all the month-end reporting, so I work up with my general manager and my controller for all the month-ending reporting. Anyone that comes in this building, I have to make sure they sign in correctly and that they can actually be here in the facility, because we can't just let anyone through the doors here.
Right.
I set up all the new vendors, all the new customers, And then I'm involved with, I'm part of the local safety committee here. So, I have to make sure that we're practicing, safety first.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, having lived most of my adult life in manufacturing, I totally understand that safety is a big deal because manufacturing environments can be difficult places to keep people safe in. Good, good. Can you, if you would be so kind, share your aspirations on your leadership journey, maybe what some of your dreams are as you move forward in your career?
So, I mean, my leadership aspiration is just to lead by example, to encourage the team, create opportunities for others to succeed. I mean, I am part of a management team locally, so it starts with me. I have to set the example. Um, my door is always open, so I'm not here to be friends with the employees, but I'm certainly here to support the employees. I want them to feel safe coming to my office, whether they're sharing something that, they might have witnessed or sharing a problem. I'm here to solve the problem.
I love that leadership by example. I learned early on in my career as I rose up the ranks and had different titles that people pay a lot more attention to how you conduct yourself than to what you say. And if the two don't coincide and don't match up, that's going to create some friction, right?
Correct.
And you really have to do what you say and say what you do. So I love that leadership by example because I realized, I think I was a newly minted VP of operations way back when I still had hair. And I was walking through the plant one day and I realized no matter where I went, everybody was paying attention.
Yep.
And it wasn't them paying attention to Mark O'Donnell, the person. It was because of the title and position that I had, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, right. I think just recognizing and realizing that what you do in your role is very, very important every minute of every day, right? Because you are setting an example one way or the other, whether you realize it or not. That's a great point. I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit for a second. You participated back in I guess it was April when we held the workshop on keys to successful leadership with my good friend Joanne Yarrow. And
yes.
I know I talked with you before and after multiple times, and I know you had a really good time in that workshop and enjoyed it. If you could share with our audience, what were some of your takeaways? What value did you get out of that workshop and being part of it?
What I got out of the workshop is that you got to be able to read people and connect with people,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to get the job done. You're going to find a way to get the solution of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. And there's different ways. You guys have two different leadership styles, and going through that seminar, it was very eye-opening on different ways you can connect with people.
Let me dive into something that you said, and thank you for that. Yeah, it's really interesting, the whole concept of that workshop. When Joanne approached me, and I've known Joanne for, goodness, 3.5, 4 years now, her and her husband, Brad, who was also at the workshop, who you got a chance to meet, I know.
You're right.
And it's funny because they are also clients of mine. They have a side business where they do consulting mostly in the performing arts space. But, we joke all the time amongst us, her and Brad and I, that, it's kind of like left brain, right brain. Like I tend to think very methodically, very linear, right? That's kind of the engineer in me, and you don't unlearn that. And they're very creative, very free-flowing, very nonlinear. So sometimes communication between us gets interesting. But we've learned a lot from each other. And I have such an appreciation when I have conversations with them because they do for me what I do for my coaching clients sometimes. They get me thinking differently and
Right.
allow me to gain some different perspectives, right?
Right.
The one point you made about different styles, that great point, very true. But I think one of the things we were trying to get across is all about connecting, right, with people, because it's all about connecting with people, 100%, right? We only succeed as leaders through our teams, right? If our teams succeed, we succeed. It's as simple as that. So it's all about connecting with people, and I think part of having different approaches and different ways of going about it and learning different ways is, the truth is, we have to meet people where they are, and everybody's in a different place and coming from a different place, right? And have different styles, right? Some people really appreciate free-flowing, nonlinear, kind of conversation. Some people, like me, not so much maybe, right? Some people prefer less structured, less formal. Some people prefer more structured, right? It's just understanding where somebody's coming from and meeting them where they are, I think, is a big part of one of the takeaways that we intended. Right. I'm curious, because one of the big points I talked about in the seminar was emotional intelligence, and we spent quite a bit of time on that. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I took away having more empathy, and listening to hear what someone is saying and not necessarily listening to respond. That was really an eye-opener for me, just when you broke everything down. And I think when you can show a little empathy to, whether it's your customer or your employee or another manager, and make them feel heard, I think that's going to build, I think that helps build the trust and the connection, to be able to meet in the middle, because sometimes you can't give the customer everything that they want, even though customers come first, and you want to keep all your customers happy. I mean, you have guidelines, and you have pricing guidelines, and you have guidelines you have to follow, and policies. So, but I think building that connection and making them feel heard.
Yeah. That's a wonderful takeaway, and I love the way you phrase it, is making sure they feel heard, because they really are being heard, right? And letting them know that. I've come to believe, and I'm sure I touched on it in the seminar, that is the basis and the core of all true human connection. And it's not about whether or not I agree with the person. It's really about making the effort to really listen, to hear what they're feeling, but then also being open to asking the questions non-judgmentally on where that's coming from, only for the purpose of better understanding, right? I could diametrically disagree, but really being willing to set aside my own judgment, right? The no judgment zone, so to speak, and really just listen, because at our core, I think it's one of the basic human needs. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. And you're 100% right. That's a great analogy with customers. When you said that about customers, that sometimes you're not going to be able to really give them what they want. Yeah, right. I worked in a project-based business where by the time they got to me to talk to, it was whatever their problem was a big problem.
Right.
Right. And oftentimes, well, I want those installers out here tomorrow, and I want my equipment out here tomorrow. Well, I knew there's just no way we could do that. I didn't have the people available. I didn't have their equipment ready. But I would listen to them, and I understand you're under time constraints. You're under potential liquid damages. How can we best navigate this situation? Because I'm not going to sit here and promise you something I can't deliver, but how can we get you to a point where I can deliver something that's going to at least get us through this situation with the least amount of pain for you, right? And they always, just by being a good listener and connecting with them and say, listen, I understand, I feel your pain. I do, right? I live in the similar world to you. I understand the stresses you're under. How can I best help you? without you demanding I deliver something I can't.
Right.
Right. And when you take that approach, it is amazing how quickly the temperature will start coming down, and all of a sudden now you're having an adult conversation on how to solve a problem, right? But at the end of the day, that's spot on. I love the way you said that. Yeah, there are going to be times when we can't give the customer everything they want. I remember in the MBA program I was in, marketing management might be the only thing I remember from marketing management, where the professor said, two rules: customer is God, and God is crazy, right? So it's like, yep, I've found that to be true. We're talking about communication in both speaking and in listening, and I know Joanne and I both touched on that during the seminar. I thought Joanne did some pretty cool stuff with the communication and the voice. Any interesting takeaways for you from that?
Yeah, it was definitely, it was very motivating and moving for me when she would say different things in a different tone.
Right.
It definitely made it easier to understand what she was saying, and it also got me more involved in what she was saying, but by the way she changed her tone.
Yep.
During the exercise.
Yeah, there's so many little things, and it's funny. I was talking with a friend of mine who is an aspiring executive, younger guy, very, very articulate, very intelligent, but sometimes he's got this tendency where as he's talking, he'll start like lowering his voice, and you can see he physically sits differently.
Right.
And I pointed that out to him, and he thanked me. He goes, nobody ever pointed that out. And I said, listen, if you're not coming across clearly and enunciating and projecting your voice, somebody on the other side of the room may not hear you clearly.
Right.
So you might have the best idea ever, but if it's not clearly presented so somebody can hear it and understand it, that's a big deal. And I do love what Joanne talked about as far as tone of voice and inflection. I used to talk to my direct reports all the time about, listen, how you say something may be more important than the actual content of what you're saying. Because
Correct.
Again, you could have this wonderful opinion, right, or this wonderful take on how to solve a problem, but if you're not articulating it in a way that gets across the idea, not offensively, because you don't want people immediately to shut themselves down, right, when you start out. I mean, I've worked with some people that just had this knack to tick people off. Now, I don't think they were doing it purposely, but maybe some of them were at times, but most of them weren't, right? But you probably have run into those kind of people. It's like, man, you can't come across abrasive because people turn you off, right? It's the old fight or flight syndrome, right?
Yep.
How about, I know one of the things I spent a fair amount of time on in the seminar was the goal planning and goal achievement. What were your thoughts on that from the seminar?
For me, that's always been one of my own strengths. So I personally, I'm very organized, and I keep journals and I keep checklists. So it for me, that's always been a strength.
So you already have implemented in your life a process of sorts, right, for
Yes.
goal planning and goal achievement, which is great, which is not surprising at all, right, having gotten to know you, right? You're, I would say, a type A personality, and most type A's tend to be goal-oriented, task-oriented, right? So having tools that help you do that stuff, not surprising at all. I think one of the interesting takeaways, though, is if you really look at the process that I presented, is there is a process as you're defining goals and then determining, okay, what's the action plan to help me achieve the goal? Is one of the key things I love to get people to do is look at obstacles, right? What's going to get in the way potentially of me achieving the goal, And if you do a good job of that, it can really well inform the action plans that I develop, because it's going to really lay, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought about that as an obstacle, right? And the
Right.
biggest obstacle for most people, number one on the list, or 1B anyways, is typically time, right? Like, okay, like how much time is this actually going to take to do X or X and Y to get my goal achieved? And also understanding that, you know, if it's more than a few minutes, I don't typically have a whole stretch of uninterrupted time, right? So what's a realistic time frame to get these things done? And oh, by the way, do I need other people, right? Do I need other sources, other resources? So I think by asking that question about what are the obstacles, it can be a big help, giving us again kind of a different perspective,
Right.
right?
Right. And for me, that's what I do, is that when someone gives me a task, I ask the questions.
Yeah,
You know, do you need this back today? Can I have a week? What's the deadline? You know, what's the budget?
yeah,
Ask all the questions up front so that I can meet the expectation
yeah.
before the deadline.
Yeah, you want to know clearly all right, what are the guidelines here? What are the guardrails? What are the rules of the game? What are the constraints? Yeah, absolutely, right? I'm sure you've heard the wordplay on assume. I won't go into it in detail, right? But
Right.
first time I saw that, I was a high school football player, and, you know, my coach was berating me for missing a block or something that, you know, you don't assume, right? Never assume. Do you remember the discussion on goal alignment from the workshop towards the end of the workshop, when we talked about how that is kind of the key and the secret sauce?
Yes.
So, you know, that's something I always like to touch on with clients, especially in leadership development programs, and sometimes it comes up in one-on-one coaching for leaders or aspiring leaders is, and this kind of ties together a lot of what we've talked about today, but it really ties together a lot of what I do with leadership development, and that's, you know, goal alignment is about getting other people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it.
Right.
Right. So how do you do that? Well, it takes that empathy, that connecting with another person, building a relationship based on trust, that's going to allow me to connect with them to the extent that they're comfortable sharing their dreams and their aspirations and their goals, right? What makes them tick? Because, you know, even the employee, and I've had people like this that literally told me, look, I'll do anything you want me to do, however you want me to do it, right? I'll give you the best work I can, but I don't want to think about work outside of work. I want to come in at 8 and go home at 5 or whatever, and right? That's like, they don't want to be CEO. They don't, you know, but so what those people aspire to is security.
Right.
Right? I mean, right? They want a secure job and they want to spend the time with the family. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody's different. We all have different things that drive us. But understanding somebody like that and say, okay, well, you know what? Let's talk about how we can make this company secure, your job secure, and so you'll get out of this what you are looking to get out of this, right? But that's the secret sauce. And when I talk about goal alignment, that's kind of the key. But, you know, included in that is, okay, you have an organization that has well-developed vision statement, mission statement, right? Here's the things that we're driving towards. Here's what makes us tick. Here's our non-negotiable. Here's our company values. All right, and then we're going to say, all right, what are the goals for the next 12 months or whatever that we need to achieve to drive us to achieve the vision, right, and have a successful mission. So you build the goal statements, and then it builds right through the ranks so that everybody knows, and we're all pulling in the same direction, where are we headed, what do we need to do to get there. But then that last piece of the puzzle, what I call the secret sauce, is tying in everybody's individual goals. Here's how us achieving the company goals allows you to achieve your personal goals, right? That's the ultimate connection. And it's just amazing when we've made that connection, right? It's a very powerful. Imagine if you had a whole company filled with people that have that connection, that they see this is what I want. This is what I want to be part of because of X, right?
Right.
You know, they're gonna go way above and beyond the call because now it's personal. It's not just, well, this is what Kim asked me to do or what the boss asked me to do. This is what we need to do, right? Very cool. So what's in the future for Kim?
I'm hoping to get some individual leadership coaching with under Bodycote. And I'm hoping to get out of that, you know, to make me a stronger communicator when I'm talking with the employees.
Cool. That'll be fun to work with you. Like I said, I already have gotten to know you a little bit through multiple conversations, and I think, you know, being a goal setter already, I mean, I think you already have a lot of building blocks in place. So I think there's a tremendous potential and upside there, just taking those and helping you kind of get to the next level as far as your own development. And
yeah, like I've already taken away, I'm involved in a lot of different meetings with different levels of, you know, whether it's management, whether it's customers, whether it's employees. And I've already changed, like when sometimes we sit in the lunchroom, you know, and there's 15 to 20 employees and usually we're all sitting, and now I stand up when I speak, you know, and I make sure I keep a smiley face and, you know, talk to them so that I'm not just sitting there and just, you know, with a low voice, you know, I become more authoritative where they can hear me. And I can already see more people engage.
Yep. Yeah. Just that little, that's a great takeaway, right? That we talked about that earlier, that learning to be consistent about projecting your voice. And Joanne talked about this, right? Speaking from kind of the diaphragm, right? Where it's not just head down, you know, kind of. That matters because, again, how we present has a lot to do with how people perceive what we say. You know, perception matters a lot. So that's cool. You know, I love the fact that you're kind of a natural learner, right? You're watching and you're going, oh yeah, I should do that differently, you know, just by watching others. And that's, you know what, everybody I've ever worked for or with, I've learned something from, even if it was what not to do. Right. But you know, certainly the better leaders that I've worked with took away some great learnings just in the way they were able to connect with people, the way they were able to communicate, the type of listener they were, all really important stuff. Well, Kim, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your obviously busy day and your work day and joining us here on the Operations Excellence Podcast. Thank you so much.
It was great. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope to continue to work with you in the future.
I appreciate that. Same here. And Kim, have a great day. Tell Eric and everybody else over there I said hi.
I certainly will. Have a great day.
You too, Kim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on this month's episode of the Operations Excellence Podcast. Mark O'Donnell signing off.